Let's do it.
Okay.
Well, where to start?
It feels like we've been doing this forever.
To be fair, our technical difficulties, I think, were fairly unique to the new setup that I'm within. At least that got us held up for the most of the time we were trying to get this going.
Yeah, well, it was a good learning experience for me. It's hard to control. It's impossible to control. What networks your users are using, but it has to. Regardless.
Totally.
Well,
look, man.
Zoom worked.
True. Well, as an intro, the reason why I was so insistent that we do it this way and not just default to Zoom is, obviously because I think it's starting to become apparent to a lot of people that, the so-called value-enabled web, I know that's not necessarily a unanimously accepted yet, but I think it's probably going to stick, is starting to represent so many unique possibilities. And it does really seem like that this is the next step or the next era in the next era of the internet, where all of these new use cases and all these new capabilities emerge as a result of basically having Bitcoin infused into all these applications and services that people use on the internet. And this is obviously one of them. And so I wanted to, get it out there in the wild and play around with it and, see how well it works, and two, to the extent possible, shift my activities as much into the value enabled / Bitcoin world as possible. And, I've been doing that in other domains, and I'd love it if I could do it in the domain of podcasting and not be using, all the fiat stuff.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that. And, I totally agree. I mean, I think monetization, on the internet in general is broken. Most websites today make money, via ads, right? And what are ads? Ads stream value to the owner of the platform or the website in exchange for users' attention. So users are paying attention on some website, and the platform, monetizes that attention. And these advertisers are paying for access to human attention. But it's indirect, and the internet needs more broadly accessible tools that stream value directly to the users in exchange for their attention, and the value needs to be streamed directly to the content creators, for the content that they're producing that's garnering that attention. Essentially just eliminating the middlemen in that transaction. And, I think the Lightning Network is critical to achieving that, because it's the only protocol that can scale, to the scale required to handle the internet and all the interactions that occur every day. And, on VIDA, we think that future, that world starts with individuals setting a price for their time and attention, or their content. In this case, you hosting a live stream, it's your content, and you get to set the price for that. So, I totally agree. I think it's the way the internet is moving. I think that, more and more power on the internet will be garnered by the content creators, the content producers, and they're going to be able to harness that power and take it away from the platform owners.
Yeah, I totally agree. And before we get into dreaming up all the potential impacts and implications of this, why was it that you decided to take this on? It's very early days in this whole phenomenon where, the value enabled web, and it's yet to be determined what the right approach is going to be, what trade-offs need to be made, and how that's going to resonate with people. So like, what inspired you to jump back into the entrepreneurial game and try your hand at figuring this out?
Yeah. Well, in general, I thrive in sort of the creation process. And I had been working for my previous employer. They acquired my previous company for about 5 years or so. And honestly, I'd kind of had enough of the big company bureaucracy, wanted to get back into creation mode. And, back in 2017, 2018, when the Lightning Network was sort of, just getting off the ground. I don't know. I have a particularly unique set of skills in like the telecom, real time audio, video, sort of building applications, in that space. And it seemed inevitable to me that Lightning was going to be used to settle the value of communications in the future. I'm not saying all communications, but when two non-trusted parties are trying to communicate with each other, the Lightning Network is perfect for settling the value for that. And I knew it was going to be, it was going to take a long time, but like, somebody has to start building that technology now, and somebody has to start, testing it in the market, and trying to find product market fit with it. And I thought, well, why not me? Why not just give it a whirl?
When did it dawn on you that the Lightning Network, and particularly, being able to have that final settlement without credit, without all the counterparty risks that involves, without all the KYC, without all the costs involved in that, right? So when you remove credit from the equation, you get final settlement. It opens up it removes a lot of impediments, and it removes a lot of inefficiencies. What do you think those are, first of all? And when did the penny kind of drop and you realizing like, wow, this will open up a lot of potential and use cases on, the internet broadly?
Yeah. Well, back in 2018, 2019, I was working on this project inside of my previous employer, and they were the largest wholesale operator in the world. So they did billions and billions, 30 billion minutes a month, of audio, video, traffic. Like they power all the dial-in numbers for Zoom. That's the behind the scenes. So massive scale, but also with massive scale, massive amounts of telecom fraud and spam, traversing their networks. And we had a project open where we were trying to use machine learning basically to identify, the spam and fraud so that we could cut it off sooner, right? But it was this constant game of cat and mouse because, why does the spam exist in the first place? It exists because it doesn't cost the spammers anything to, programmatically send out 100,000 phone calls, and make 100,000 people's phones ring, right? It doesn't cost them anything to do that. And, at the time, this was when the Lightning Network was coming out, and I was like, man, we could actually, if we could just settle the value of this communication in real time and not have, and if the company could not have to operate on trust, and actually instead settle the value of it in real time, that would completely disincentivize spam from existing in the first place. And that's kind of what got me thinking about it. And, I sort of started tinkering with, building the SIP infrastructure and stuff that would be required to actually settle the value of communication with the Lightning Network. Started tinkering, and it became apparent that it was possible. And here we are.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if it was super clear in my tweet, but we are using a VIDA call right now, and we're streaming it to Twitter, and we'll get the audio and video recording later. So this is pretty cool. I mean, I think a lot of people would be surprised that already so much can be done from within it. Because I think the general thinking is that you have to make a lot of trade-offs, right? Like all this new Lightning Bitcoin stuff is very clunky, and it can't compete with your Zooms and your Zencasters and that kind of stuff. But I mean, for as long as you guys have been at it, this is pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, our whole goal is to make VIDA accessible to anyone. Like, we don't want you to, have to be a Bitcoin geek in order to get value from using VIDA. We let you fund an account with credit card, as an example. You don't have to just use the Lightning Network. And,
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. You can fund an account with credit card. It's not as good of an experience, as if you fund it with Lightning. We have to charge extra fees because of credit card risk. The person receiving, the funds don't get their money for 30 days, whereas if you top up your account with Lightning, it's instant.
All the function is very similar once the account is funded.
It's similar, except the person receiving the funds, again, their money's held until the funds settle, right? And so any user can go into VIDA settings and turn off receiving VIDA credit, which is essentially what we call it. Like if you don't want to receive these held funds. But our goal with VIDA is to incentivize every user to use the Lightning Network with either marking the fees down, or B, because you actually get the benefit of real-time settlement. If your VIDA account is connected to Strike, and somebody's watching one of your paid streams on VIDA or sending you a message, those funds go immediately to Strike, right? Immediately to your account. If you have a Lightning address connected to your account, those funds go immediately to your Lightning address. We never touch them at all. So we're trying to encourage any user that signs up for VIDA to use the Lightning Network because it's actually beneficial for them, not just because it's the only option that we offer. We want to make it clear that using the Lightning Network is better. It's better than fiat in every way.
Totally. And so insofar as, you have a SAT, a Bitcoin balance on your VIDA page, that's custodial, right? Mm-hmm. But as you just said, you can make it non-custodial for the streaming payments and all that other stuff that comes in through the different mechanisms by which people can send you money on VIDA. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's totally possible to use VIDA entirely non-custodially, and we encourage you to do that. In fact, we cut our fees in half if you connect your account to some other Lightning service. So we support LN Bits as an example. So you can go give us spin up an LN Bits wallet anywhere and connect it to your VIDA account, and we never touch your money.
Nice.
That's sending or receiving. On the receive side, we have a lot of other options like a Lightning address or Strike or OpenNode. We offer a lot of sort of ways to connect to whatever you have that's Lightning powered. And that's the beauty of Lightning, is it lets all these services interact with one another in really unique ways. And we're going to be rolling out a unique sign-up process soon that lets you completely sign up end to end without ever us needing to create a custodial account for you. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, is that we don't want to touch your money if we don't have to, because it's easier for us to build, to scale our company, because we don't have to deal with the regulatory issues related with being a custodian, and it's better for you because you don't have to give us any of your information.
And can you use VIDA entirely anonymously?
So as of today, because by default everyone is getting a custodial account, even if you connect it to another account, as of today, the sign-up process requires that you put in a phone number and verify a phone number. But by the end of the week, that's actually changing. We're completely revamping it to have this non-custodial, non-KYC sign-up option. So
that's awesome. So what does that entail? You providing some sort of virtual number to signups?
Yeah, well, that's not necessarily required. And by the way, if you do give us your phone number, you do get a lot of value from that, because like if somebody pays to send you a message, we deliver it straight to your cell phone, over SMS, and you can just respond over SMS. If somebody tries to call you, we forward the call to your cell phone. You just answer it like a normal phone call, and you're getting paid. So there are a lot of advantages, to integrate your cell phone number with VIDA, but we don't want people to have to do that. It's just not required. Why make them? So coming up soon, like you'll just be able to sign up with an email address or with Twitter, like you used to be able to. And then when you go to sort of set up your account to receive funds, you'll be able to choose our custodial option, which will require that you verify your phone number, or a non-custodial option, which will sort of walk you through either connecting an LN Bits. We're working with Swan to be able to connect a Swan account straight to VIDA. You can connect an OpenNode account, you can connect a Strike account. So we're going to give you tons of options. Whatever you feel comfortable with, you'll be able to connect it.
That's awesome. What would you say is like I've heard you mention before, and I think even on this call so far, although the lines are blurred between our pre-call and this and being live, but you mentioned before this idea of having a market price for your time, and all of these different functions and this platform basically making it more easy for you to do that, making it more easy for you to price your time in all the different ways you might devote your time, which would be answering messages or being on a live stream and receiving in-stream comments, taking phone calls. Is that the overarching, thesis or idea here, or is there something else?
No, I mean, I think that's it. Ultimately, I think that, well, I guess I'll step back and say this, it's very difficult to get in touch with someone these days without having some social connection ahead of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you for example, I don't know if you have your DMs open on Twitter or not, but let's say that you didn't, right? How do I actually just send you a message, and show you my intent, to have a real, conversation with you? Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's really not a lot of ways to do that, and the reason is because of spam, right? We're all sort of we've all closed ourselves off, to open access because of the giant spam issue that we all have. And the issue is that it's free, right? It's free to contact you in most circumstances. If you had the contact, the communication path open, it's free. So there's no disincentive to spam. So the idea with VIDA is that everyone's time is valuable. Everyone's attention is valuable. And if we really want to stop spam while still allowing anyone to have access, while still allowing open access, the only way to do it is by setting a price on your time. And that's sort of the fundamental picture. But we're attacking the market in the near term by offering valuable tools for creators like you. We're offering this live streaming platform for free. We're offering HD recording for free. There's probably no easier way on the internet to host a paid live stream than with VIDA today. It's just not something that exists. So we want to offer real value to creators like you through these tools, and then at the same time help you monetize your audience in other circumstances, through paid calls and messages. And we hope we can get the flywheel starting with normal people, so that when they sign up, to watch a paid stream or to message you after a show or whatever, they set their own rates as well. And they set up their own profile as well, so that ultimately, maybe we can pull off creating sort of the world's first paid phone book, sort of global paid phone book, where you can access anyone at the rate that they set. That was kind of long-winded.
Right. That's great. But so, I mean, first of all, does that just mean you're absorbing all the, because as I alluded to a few minutes ago, you guys are providing what a lot of other platforms provide, either together or individually, and you're all doing it in one place and you're offering it all for free. So are you guys just eating the cost of doing that right now? And if so, how long can you do that? And what is I presume the monetization model for you guys is just taking a cut of all the flows that happen on the platform, but
yeah, that's exactly right. So, we're basically offering a new monetization, method. So, we're offering, similar features to Restream, and similar features to Riverside, and, similar features to Zoom, I guess, in some ways, except we're just monetizing it in a different way because we have these unique monetization tools built into the product. And by default, like if you're using our system custodially, we take 20%, which is on the lower end of like anything you'd find anywhere else. Like, Twitch takes 50+%. If you look at something like, I don't know, OnlyFans, I think they take 25%. If you connect your VIDA account to any Lightning service, we cut our fee in half and we only take 10. So it's actually a really good deal to connect your account to a Lightning service and, get to use all these features and functionality without any additional cost.
Right. One of the things you guys, first of all, it's been interesting because we had a call, I don't know what it was now, 3 or 4 months ago, about, it could have been even more, Bitcoin time, what it's like. But you guys seem to be iterating quite quickly. One of the things that I'm not exactly sure when you launched it, but it's the VIDA.page, right? Like a landing page for someone's, well, for anyone really, and all their different destinations. And I think not only is that great for you guys, because I think, it's another value proposition for people to be familiar with the platform and use the platform. But a lot of people out there who are doing creative work or just, anything of value, really. Having a web page and an online presence and all that kind of stuff is kind of a big stumbling block. And even if it's not a stumbling block, usually everything becomes disparate, right? You have this for that and this for that. And it's, the UX that you guys have put into that, and the, very simple to put all your destinations there, and this is who I am, and this is my rate, and all that kind of stuff. I can see it being very appealing to people that don't want to mess around with all that stuff, but just recognize, I want an online presence. I want a way for people to get in touch with me, and I want a way that I can showcase the thing, link to the things that I'm involved in. And you guys have done a very good job at making that super simple and integrating it with all the other stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, it's just another example, sort of our strategy, right? We want to provide all the value we possibly can, to a creator or to a user on the internet, and that includes offering a free link page, something that you typically have to pay for, through something like Linktree, or some of those other competitors. We want to do it for free because we want you to use our monetization, tools. And we're just getting started, with the monetization tools. I mean, if you think about it, the entire economy is essentially, run on, the value of human time and attention, especially online, right? So the amount of tools that one can create to help people monetize the value of their time and attention is really sort of endless, right? And that's our whole ball game. We're trying to use the Lightning Network to create new tools to help you harness the value of your time and attention. And we're starting with what we consider to be sort of the low-hanging fruit. And we're starting with tools that help pull people onto the VIDA network. And we want to offer real value. We don't want to just we want to offer real tangible value to the people using our product in the form of a free link page, all the other features we talked about for podcasters like yourself. And we're going to keep iterating until we create enough of a value proposition where it just becomes a no-brainer to participate on the VIDA network. You can't succeed in building a business unless you're offering real value. And, we want to be very straightforward about it, and and make it clear that VIDA is a valuable tool that any creator should have in their repertoire.
Yeah. Well, it certainly seems like you guys are doing a great job in making that case and iterating on it. How many are you guys right now?
It's just 3 of us full time. So myself and my 2 co-founders, Brandon and Noah, both guys I've known for a while. Brandon, I met at my last gig. He actually joined the same company through a different acquisition. He was a VP of engineering for a while, has built startups and scaled big companies. And then Noah was actually my college roommate. We built a startup out of college that we sold together. And then he moved to the Bay Area and did a whole bunch of other startups. He's one of those rare guys that, can write code, but also design and make it look good. So, we're all builders, but, he's responsible, he's responsible for making the product look and function as good as it does. So props to him.
Yeah, it's very slick. Are you guys planning on raising money for this at any point in the near future?
Yeah, we're kind of in the middle of a little mini angel round right now. But we're not trying to go too fast, on the fundraising and growth side. We want to make sure that, we have driven a wedge into some product market fit in the market. And, we have made ourselves indispensable, for, a group of creators like yourself. We've got quite a few other folks that are going to come on the platform and start recording their podcasts live and essentially turning them into live shows over the coming months. Kevin Rook's been a big supporter as well. Breedlove. So, folks like that. And we're going to, try to get the flywheel turning a little bit faster, before we go and raise a whole bunch of money.
I hope it would seem like this would be the case. I hope it is, that the incentive structure that's now available for live streaming, and like something like YouTube had it before, where you could, boost $5 or $20 or whatever. But obviously we're talking about all the frictionless enhancements that come along with, Bitcoin and Lightning. But I'm hoping that means more people will actually do live shows. Mm-hmm. Because to me, like, you would think there's no difference, right? We record this and then we publish it, or we do it live. But I've always been of the opinion that there is a difference, which is why I've always done live shows, or at least I think maybe I started with not live, and then sometime in 2020 shifted to live. But it makes it more real, right? And then, I mean, this is kind of what Bitcoin is all about, right? Kind of bringing a realness to the digital world in a sense. And I'm hoping now that people have an opportunity to monetize the live stream. Maybe that will increase the incentive to bringing these conversations more into a real time sort of dynamic. Because I don't know, it seems like you lose something if there's a potential to edit, and I'd like to see more live conversations.
Yeah, I agree. And this gives us a chance to pull in the audience as well. Like that's one of our big hopes, is that we can provide tools for creators to actually get their audience involved, in the show, whether that's like just a Q&A segment at the end, whether that's through the paid chat, while the stream is going, whether that's like pulling audience members on the stage to ask questions to a guest. All of those things add, more uniqueness to the live show that if you're listening to a recording, you don't get access to. You don't get access to the host's attention, to actually ask a live question, if you're listening to a recording. So, we think there is a lot of value in live experiences, and we're, very, very much focused on, adding features and functionality, that make it easier for creators like you to sort of, create and manage these live experiences. So yeah.
What's been the most popular aspect of the offering thus far? Like what, have people most used?
I guess, by far and away, just, messaging, has been the most used thing so far. However, these live streams are quickly outpacing it as we get more folks, doing their live recordings on VIDA every week. But, the simplicity of just, paying to message someone at a rate that they set, to get their attention, it's valuable, like if you're somebody like, I don't know, like Jimmy Song, for example, uses our Twitter DM bot, which is very simple. It's like, if you try to message Jimmy and you don't follow him, or he doesn't follow you, you're going to get a message that says, hey, I don't often check my, my Twitter non-follower DM. So if you want to get my attention, then do it here. Right. And, he gets folks that send him messages, because they're trying to get his attention, and it's not a lot. Like, it doesn't have to be, $50 a message or something. 10 cents is enough to completely, filter out, the noise from the signal, because somebody went through the trouble of, paying scanning a lightning invoice to send you this message. It's not a bot, it's not spam, the person has at least, some level of seriousness to take your attention. So messaging has been by far and away, the most used feature thus far, but changing quickly.
Yeah. Is that feature what Tweetoshi is doing as well? It's kind of a new startup or service.
Tweetoshi, let's see. Tweetoshi, I actually really like those guys. We actually communicated over VIDA quite a bit. But no, they have a really unique thing. Basically, they've made a Twitter client, a new Twitter client.
That's right.
That sort of, I don't know, I guess I would describe it as overlaying, lightning tipping.
You can monetize all actions on
into
Twitter.
the UI itself. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which is awesome. I'm a huge fan of what those guys are doing.
Yeah. What do you like, going back to the idea of starting to put a market price on people's time and attention, basically, one of the things that is often talked about in Bitcoin, and one of the things that makes me so excited, is that, we live in a world today where capital is priced by a bunch of old dudes in a room once a quarter, completely insane, and basically for the whole world, although there's obviously, several central banks, but the US dollar runs the show basically. And that's just the height of insanity as far as anyone who has any clue is concerned. And with Bitcoin now, as a result of the activity happening there, and as more activity moves into that economy, then capital will be priced far more efficiently in real time, because there'll be no friction to doing so. It's instantaneous, it's global. And so to the extent that you need capital to be priced in an economy, which I presume you always will to some degree, Bitcoin is basically going to give you the most pristine capital signal, or capital price signal you could imagine. And that's super exciting for efficiency gains and productivity and, what gets produced and all that kind of stuff, investment generally, and the, maximizing the benefit of investment and minimizing malinvestment and capital destruction. Is there a similar sort of phenomenon, do you think, will be brought to the price of human capital, the price of attention capital, the price of time capital by overlaying or bringing a price directly to that thing? Because, money is obviously a way of doing that by proxy for our time and attention and stuff like that. And that's why it's so integral and so important. But will these sorts of tools that you're contributing to, will they similar pricing efficiency to those intangibles? And if so, what do you think the kind of major benefits of that will be, beyond just being able to monetize, creativity and empowering creators and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if we just sort of, look at the fundamentals, so how is spam mostly managed today? We essentially, erect walls around access, right, to someone. Either sometimes those walls are like social connections, like, I need to already be connected to you, 2 degrees away through someone else, or something like that. Or, you need to be whitelisted on, in my address book, as a sort of more extreme, example. Or I need to already be following you, to DM, if you want to DM me, right? So those are all examples of us sort of closing off open access, to ourselves because of this spam problem. But, if everyone had an open price set for their time and attention, then we get rid of all of these sort of artificial walls that are put up and restricting access, which is, you could sort of think of another way is it's restricting inbound opportunities that, could otherwise, come to us, right? Because there's no way to reach you, right? So you're cut off from these potential opportunities that, you could be receiving. But if you sort of extrapolate that a little bit at scale, like, think of all of the human connections that don't happen, the valuable possible human connections that don't happen every day because of all of these barriers in place, for 2 people to connect to one another, right? Mm-hmm. Back in the old days, when phone calls still cost a lot, like a long distance phone call, for example, could still cost, I don't know, a few cents a minute, right? But everybody's name was in the public address, so you could actually call someone, like, or you could cold call someone and they would still answer because it just, it didn't happen all the time, and it actually cost people money, so that it wasn't being abused, right? But there was still a way to sort of get on the phone with someone that you didn't know, and we've completely lost that, right? So how much GDP, of the world is lost because 2 people, that are trying to connect with one another, one person looking for particular expertise about X, right, has no way to talk to the person with expertise, about X, because there's just no path for them to, communicate. So I guess to boil it down, I think if we all actually set a price for our time and attention, then it would help the economy flourish, because the people that, actually need access to your very valuable time and attention would actually be able to access it. And you would be fairly compensated because you're in charge of your rates. So, if we even step back and think about it, in sort of a more fundamental perspective, what is your time and attention? It's a scarce good, right? It's a scarce good that lots of people in the world want, right? So the only way to allocate a scarce good to a market is through price, right? Otherwise, you have shortages, right? Mm-hmm. Not everyone can get access to it. That's exactly, what sort of the dynamic that spam creates. But if you want to efficiently allocate a scarce good to a market, you set a price, and then the price can fluctuate and allocate the good as it would get allocated. So
yeah.
Kind of a tangent there, but I don't
know.
I
love it. It makes me think of almost like a topography. And right now, because of the spam problem and because there's no way of signaling to the receiver of potential information, potential value signal, let's say, everything kind of gets flattened, right? And one of the, I'd say the consequences of that is people withdraw, right? Basically, your attention is being DDoSed all the time. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, you're like, all right, I'm not answering DMs. I'm not answering the phone. I'm not doing whatever, you know? And so it's only about your intentions being pushed out into the world. I mean, I'm talking extremes here, but like you default to that more because the signal of the inward signal is so poor that you basically have to just rely on the external signal. But your external signal is a receiving signal, a potentially received signal to somebody else. Right. And your own signal, which you deem to be valuable and worthy and all the rest of it, is being treated the same that you treat all the DDoS signals that your attention is receiving. And so you just get so much noise in the system. And it's almost like you have an undifferentiated, and you get an undifferentiated topography. Whereas it seems like when you start to price your time and attention and signal that, it's almost like you can pull out the peaks, you know, from the topography. And now you're able to identify, oh, that's a more valuable signal. Maybe I want to consider it. Maybe I do want to integrate it. Maybe I do want to let it penetrate my attention because there would be potential value in whatever is there, the cooperation, the information, the what have you. Which intuitively makes sense. And it seems like it would be a massive, as you said, you know, boon to individual and collective productivity, because where a value signal is more able to be, perceived or received and then acted upon, well, you're going to get more commerce, you're going to get more trade, you're going to get more value creation generally. And if we're saying now that particularly in the age of the internet and, you know, the information age, let's say over the last 20 years, that has been so perverted by all the noise in the system and the inability to properly price and differentiate and distinguish between all the signals that are coming at people. If that's been the case thus far in the information age, once we bring a more pristine value signal to that domain, presumably the consequences would be tremendous in terms of productivity and again, value creation.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like, you know, Bitcoiners often talk about, you know, the price of money, you know, prices in general, you know, being impacted negatively through monetary policy, right, and inflation and things like that. And, you know, it's impossible to sort of, you know, wrap our minds around all of the negative impact that ripples through the economy, right? Distorted price signals for goods and services. Well, the same is true, you know, when the value of our own time and attention is distorted and manipulated, you know, because, you know, oftentimes when we're online, we have no control over the value of our time and attention. Somebody else is leeching the value of our time and attention, you know, through advertisements. We don't have any control over the price of that, you know, over the price that we're willing to actually look at an advertisement, right? We have zero control. But, you know, if I were to go to your VIDA page right now and send you a picture, you know, just send you a message, pay your 25-cent rate and send you a picture message, what is that to you? You're going to get that, you know, on your phone. You're going to look at that picture, and it cost me 25 cents to put that in front of your eyeballs, and you're in total control of that price, right? Is that different or the same as, you know, you scrolling Twitter and seeing, you know, an ad that Twitter places there? You have no idea how much money they're making on, you know, that ad, but you had to see it, right? It leached your attention. You know, but on VIDA, you know, if you get too many of those, what do? You just raise your rate until you stop getting them. You know, you stop getting the messages you don't want, and you tweak your price until then. So it shifts the power of, you know, the power dynamic in marketing away from the platform owners and back to the individuals, you know. It's like, you know, I'm not necessarily building VIDA like to create this new advertising network, but, you know, that's kind of what you'd get in the end if everybody had a price on their time. You'd be able to control the price for someone to access your attention in any form.
Do you think it will evolve? Because setting a flat rate is almost like a price cap, right? Like it's 25 cents to send me a message or a photo. And as we know, price caps usually don't optimize for productivity or cooperation or, optimal production, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it'll evolve into being more of a, well, again, if we use that topography example again, you'd be able to look at something, however it's listed or ordered, but you'd be able to see where the strongest signal is, not equating all offers for your time and attention, but you'd be able to see, wow, Lyle wants to speak with whomever, and he's willing to pay $50 an hour, $100 an hour, $1,000 an hour. And then, because if we're talking about this being a tool basically to, outsource cognitive load in a sense, or at least parse the signals that you're receiving, that you can engage in the signals that are more valuable to you, which I would say aids in cognition at the very least, because what is cognition but attempting to filter out the valuable from the less valuable and then focus your attention on that and whatever else is wrapped up in your attention, like your work and your time and your energy and all that kind of stuff. So if that really is kind of a broad foundational thesis here, then you would tend to think that it will evolve in such a manner that those signals can differentiate themselves. And you would be able to then have all else equal, you would choose a signal that's offering you $100 for your time than $10 for your time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We've thought about that a lot. And in fact, a lot of users ask us for like the ability to have a dynamic price that automatically, changes based on like how many messages they're receiving that day. Or imagine, if we were hosting an AMA, in VIDA, and you were letting people join the stage to ask a question, for a guest or something like that. You would want the price to scale with the demand, right? If there was 1,000 people, waiting to ask a question, we would want the price to be able to dynamically adjust to that. So that's one way, we are looking at implementing dynamic pricing, for a variety of events, because it's going to be required, inevitably. Another one is that, today you can include a gift. So let's say I go and send you a message, on VIDA. I can bump up the amount that I'm sending above and beyond what your rate is just by including a gift. And when you get that notification, you're going to see, Lyle sent $10, for this message. And when you open up your conversation history in the VIDA app, it sorts, the order of the conversations by the amount that has been received. So, we sort of have subtle ways, to do that in the app today, but, definitely, something we're digging into, because, you're right. A single price is, too simplistic, especially if we're talking about sort of, letting everyone set a market price for their time. We have to sort of have more advanced pricing tools as well.
Yeah. Would it always be, because I understand part of there's been things before that tried to put a paywall up to people's attention, with email or what have you. One of the issues being, and I'm sure there's several, but you're already invading someone's attention to get them to look at the offer of what, so open my email for $5. Well, you just got 10, 20 seconds of my time. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think to combat that, that's where you charge for the sending of the email or the message rather than making it an offer.
That's exactly why we, do it. And we've had a lot of users sort of ask us why, like, why am I gonna, why can't I pay only, if I know he's going to read it, right? Well, it's because, whenever you send a message on VIDA, what do? We send a email to you, we send a push notification to your phone. Sometimes we send an SMS if you have that on, so you're actually getting pinged with these notifications that, as you say, require your time to actually go and look at the email and decide if you want to take action or not, right? That's spam. You just got to send a message, for free if you were only paying, if you respond or read it, right? Mm-hmm. And at scale, that doesn't work, right? That doesn't work because you're just promoting spam, Yeah. So on VIDA, we do not send you a notification unless somebody's paying to do it, and that's a core principle of the product.
Yeah. Now, counterpoint being that also limits the, well, let's just say, type of signal that I might receive as the creator, the person whose attention someone is trying to access. And by that I mean, let's say it's just a flat, you pay for sending the message. And so, you have to make the decision. Well, how much am I willing to pay on the chance that Lyle might read my message? Well, 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe max. But if I could say, well, I could put $1,000 up to guarantee that Lyle gets it, and if he doesn't read it, it gets sent back to me. Do you see? And then you would again be able to optimize for yourself receiving the highest, but also optimize for people willing to express that demand. Because if you make it a sacrifice in a sense, whereby no matter what they are spending the money, presumably you would get people less willing to put up as much money, and therefore you not receiving the highest value signal that you otherwise might. Something to that effect.
Yeah. So we're sort of attacking that problem in a multi-pronged way. The first one is that we're rolling out stats, like reply stats on every user. So basically, before you send a message, you will be able to see how often a user, responds, right? So it's essentially a response rate. So if somebody like you're trying to send, maybe they made an account, last year or something like that, and they just don't respond anymore. You'll be able to see that their response rate is really low. You may not want to spend the money, to send this user a message. So that's the first point. The second point of potentially being able to put an additional response bounty, to sort of frame it like that, on a particular message. We've thought about that as well as a number of other options. It's kind of problematic though, in this regard. So, one of the things we want to do with VIDA is we want you to be able to use VIDA non-custodially, if you have a service that you can connect to. Well, a bounty requires that we sit in the middle of that. A bounty requires that we take money up front, hold it on your behalf, wait to see if you, respond or not within some time period, and then either send it to you, or send it back to the person if you don't, right? And, we've thought about doing it. We might do it, but it requires that we be a custodian in every, instance that happens. And we don't really like that part of it because it kind of breaks our model of, you can use everything about VIDA non-custodially. That's our goal. We want all users to be non-custodial users, if possible. Yeah. It's going to take us a while to get there just because, not everyone's a Bitcoiner yet, but, we're working on that part too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. And that's the conundrum that so many platforms, companies in the space are facing. It's like we could do a bunch of cool stuff more easily if we were custodial, or we, and it's not even just about, adhering to the ethos. It's a very real, if you are not non-custodial, if you're custodial, you will be captured at some point. The question becomes, will you be able to transfer your service to a non-custodial and uncapturable, or if that's a word, approach when that time comes? Basically, if it can be rugged, it will be rugged eventually, whether we're talking about, Bitcoin services or all this kind of stuff. So how can you put a little bit more meat on that bone?
Yeah, I mean, not only that, there's all sorts of, bullshit that we as a company, have to do if we're offering, custodial service. And we don't want to have to do that, unless we really have to, and it costs a lot of money to be compliant. It ain't cheap, for example, getting money services licenses in 50 states is a complete and utter, shit show. There's no other way to say it. We have a goal of being accessible to everyone so that we have the opportunity to introduce anyone and everyone, into Bitcoin and the Lightning Network and the strengths and advantages that it offers, So we're going to bite the bullet off, and get legal from that perspective. But still, we're going to continue to incentivize you to not go that route and to connect your account to LNbits or to a Lightning address or to Strike or to an OpenNode account or some other custodian that you trust, like Swan, because that's how we have the biggest impact. That's how we expose the maximum number of people to Bitcoin and the Lightning Network over time. If we sort of limit ourselves to non-custodial only, maybe we could eventually, build enough of a business to survive. But even if we did, how many new people would we orange pill, about sort of the beauty of the Lightning Network and how it works?
Yeah. Well, I feel you, man. But again, that's the trade-off. And I just, it seems like the compliant approach, like, it seems like as this story unfolds, this whole Bitcoin emerging and, taking over fiat of idea, the compliance will just get tighter and tighter and tighter. I mean, that is the mechanism of control that the to impose on this thing in order to try to control it, mitigate it, destroy it in some way. And it just seems like that it's such a slippery slope. Again, I really do feel you, because that's how they get you. That's the appeal. It's like, oh, you can do so much more when you're compliant, because the roadblocks are emptied, and most people are used to a compliant experience. That's that's the biggest problem, is people aren't used to doing things in a self-sovereign sort of way. They want all the backstops and the assurances and conveniences that the compliant approach has made ubiquitous. And
right.
part of the thing about Bitcoin is, both from its like very foundations, like now you're in control of your money, which means you're also responsible for your money. And I mean, even that particular issue, forget about all the value enabled stuff and custodial, non-custodial. I mean, that's still a huge stumbling block for so many people just to adopt Bitcoin. It's like, what, you really think people are going to custody their own 12 words, or they're going to set up their own multi-sig? No way, bro. It's never going to happen. And then you get all these concessions being made by people who still want, who want more people to own Bitcoin. So, quote unquote, own Bitcoin. But to me, it seems like that philosophy, we're just going to end up recreating something akin to the existing system that eventually people will get burned by.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's a different paradigm,
One thing, can you click the live button on VIDA? We're actually not live on VIDA right now. I just realized.
Where is that button?
It's the furthest left button. It's the same little broadcast icon.
Oh shit.
No, it's funny. Kevin Rook just messaged me and said, "Hey, I tried to come join a comment or submit a comment." Well, anyway, we'll fix that, make it automatic in the future. If you go live on Twitter or something, we'll automatically go live on Twitter. But to answer your question, trust me, I have struggled with this conundrum, a lot in the midst of building VIDA. And it's like, sometimes I guess the example I use is like, okay, how many people, would buy Bitcoin if the only way to
if they only what?
How many people would buy Bitcoin if the only way to buy it is you have to like buy it and it has to go immediately into cold storage, right? So like, unfortunately, I think that it's probably kind of low, right? So it's like typically
the Bitcoin, baby. Shout out.
Trust me, I get it. All my Bitcoins is cold storage, but like, the first Bitcoin I bought wasn't, it wasn't, and I don't know, I mean, I would have eventually gotten there, but like, how long would it have taken me, right? And like, I think about, just the sort of the classic extreme cases, like, my mom or something, if the only way for her to buy Bitcoin was that she had to be ready, to have it immediately deposited into cold storage, would she do it? And I am of the opinion that like, maybe one day we can get there, right? Like, but in the early days of Bitcoin, would that have even been possible? Probably not, just because even, we didn't even have seed phrases, originally, right? So, we built these on ramps and we educate people why cold storage is important. But ultimately, like, if we want our message to be heard by the most amount of people as possible, we have to sort of give them ways to, take a taste and try a bite, and sort of ease their way into the, into the water. And that's kind of what, that's kind of our strategy with, with VIDA. We want you to be able to use the product and get value from it. immediately, whether you know anything or nothing about the Lightning Network. But ultimately, if you use VIDA often, you're absolutely going to connect it to a Lightning service, and you're absolutely going to fund your wallet with Lightning, because it makes sense, for both you as the person sort of, sending an outbound communication or receiving an inbound communication. It's cheaper, you get your money faster, the experience is better, everything about it is better if you use Lightning.
Yeah. And by a Lightning service, I mean, presumably your own Lightning node, right?
Yeah. I mean, today, if you can, like on Umbrel, for example, you can spin up Ellen bits on your Umbrel node and connect it straight into VIDA. I don't know how many other Lightning services, can even do that, right? In the same way. So I don't know. We're trying to add any and every Lightning integration that is possible. We want it to exist. I'm working with the Albi guys to build in support for Albi wallets. So it's like you got to put in the work and do the hard integrations. If we're going to set a good example for like how Lightning services should be built.
Totally. And shout out to Orange Pill Addicts, who threw a message in the chat. I'm so unused to reading messages during podcasts. I'm not sure if it's going to be my thing going forward, but in the spirit of trying things out today. But just to play devil's advocate a little bit, although I think I lean more towards this argumentation, is that you said, like, should my mom have been forced to buy direct to cold storage? So Bull Bitcoin in Canada, that's what they force people to do, right? You have to input an address to make the purchase. And Francis is that way ideologically, and I love him for it. But my kind of
just a Bitcoin address, though, right? I mean, they don't know that it's custodial.
Well, sure.
So yes. I mean, I guess my point is, like, I wonder what percentage,
No, totally. But my point was going to be, like, and of course you're right, but the punchline is that I think a lot of Bitcoiners their refrain would be, is like, well, they didn't buy Bitcoin, did they? They bought an IOU. And you could make the case that a lot of people will, like, see, the problem is, as the argument goes, is like, well, it's one step at a time. Get them to buy Bitcoin on exchange, and when they're ready, get them to take it off exchange. But what's going to make them ready to take it off exchange? Is it just a nominal amount? Be like, $1,000, like that's too risky. Because my fear, and I think this has been borne out by how much Bitcoin has been put on custodial exchanges or BlockFi or whatever, is that if nothing bad happens, people just kind of say, well, why is it worth the hassle? Like, why bother? And the same is true, when ETFs and stuff have been launched, and all the the people that are hoping they get launched in the States. I mean, again, that's just somebody else holding a bunch of Bitcoin exposure for you. And I don't know long term. Of course, short term liquidity, pump your bags, people can get exposure, but they're just getting fiat exposure. And long term, is that a good thing? Because in my opinion, it's highly probable that the ETF custodians and the centralized exchanges and all those people can and will be leaned on, restricted, made compliant, hacked, fail. Look what just happened with FTX, and hopefully that's a cautionary tale. But I know for a lot of, like, people will still be like, oh, well, an ETF will be fine. Well, how, like, maybe there's a bit more regulatory structure in place to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen. But the same thing could happen. Someone could fat finger things on their custody that, someone could abscond with the funds. Like, to me, the expedient road is just, like it always does, going to cause people to cut corners, and it's going to be more painful in the end. Whereas, the humble road is the slower road. And again, this is not prescriptive. I'm not telling you what you should do with VIDA, but, like, this is the conundrum that we face.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, that's why, the situation is a little different on VIDA. Like, for example, does it cost you anything to keep your coins on Coinbase? Unfortunately, no, right? There's not enough disincentive to keep your coins, on Coinbase. If it actually cost you more, to do it, maybe more people would pull it off. But right now, it's like the only cost is this, potential, future rugging that no one takes seriously, right? Well, with VIDA, it actually does cost you significantly more to use our account, our service custodially. And that's how it will always be, So we are, incentivizing users to use our service non-custodially and, to use our service, with other participants in the Lightning ecosystem for a variety of reasons, because we want to see the larger ecosystem grow. We don't want to sit in the middle of your money. We don't want to touch it if we don't have to. We want to encourage, our users to, try out a Lightning service. Like if you're a creator and you're streaming on VIDA and you're making, you're making money, we literally double, or cut in half our fee, if you sign up for Strike or sign up for Blue Wallet, or use Alby or use OpenNode or use Swan or any other Lightning service, So I think that's a big problem, I guess, to boil it down, is that, we need to incentivize using services non-custodially and disincentivize using, services custodially. And I think if more did, then, maybe we'll see the tide change.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think people are just going to have to learn the hard way a lot of these times. And then companies like yours are just going to have to find out what the balance is between what the trade-offs are and what you're willing to, or trying to find the best balance of the trade-offs, I guess. But, right. Before I move on to the last couple of things, back to this idea of that being able to parse the signal that's coming at you, right? I think that'll be very, very important. And it makes me think of a little bit of the, the mempool, right? Because if you, let's say on a given day, you said like, I'm willing to browse 20 messages. I'm willing to make myself available for 1 hour. That's my block, right? And I'm, the rest of the time I'm busy with family work. I don't want to be on my phone. I don't want to have my attention lost or whatever. And then, in the morning, you just flip through and the top fee is at the top. And as you go down, it gets lower and lower, and you can choose, to include the ones you want. And when it's full, it's full, and resets the next day or the next, whatever the time frame is. Like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea, to sort of have a cap that you set on like the number that you'll look at per day, and then have the price adjust based on the cap. That's a very simple way to implement that. So I'm actually going to write it down.
What's been the
you can sort of achieve that with the voice calls today. Like, I don't know if you know this, but you can set your availability, for calls and meetings, on your VIDA page settings. So like if you only want to be available for calls for 2 hours a week, those are the only 2 slots that will show up, that people can reserve. You can pay to reserve, and, that will sort of, be the only option people have. But we don't really have a similar mechanism for messages.
Yeah. And, another interesting potential, and I'm sure you guys have a bajillion ideas. So I know this is, we're just shooting the shit here with stuff that comes to our mind. But, we were saying before how you'd be able to optimize for signal if people, if the element of sacrifice was minimized. So they, and the response was, well, yeah, but then we're back to square one where you actually have to browse offers, let's say. And, maybe there's some degree of willingness to do that. Like, again, if you're browsing through your own personal mempool and, the most valuable offers are at the top, and you go down, and maybe, so let's say someone offered you $100 for an hour of your time, and your day was filled already, and in the foreseeable future, you didn't have any more slots. Maybe you could just swipe left on it and it sends it right back to them. I mean, we're dealing with Lightning anyways, right? So it's like, it's no sweat off my ass to send a transaction, to send money back, and there's a bit of a reputational honor system thing going on there, but seemingly easily resolvable with the reputational tools you're thinking of. And so in that case, the risk of sending an offer, or, how should I say this? You're optimizing for meeting the attention with the maximal potential value for that offer, for that potential out in the market, and minimizing for the risks of doing so, I guess. Wouldn't that be cool? Right. Like you're scrolling through and you see an offer and you're like, not today, and you send it right back, and no harm, no foul.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Other people have sort of, asked us that in a slightly different but similar way. Like, they want to be able to reverse the flow of funds in a conversation. So the way VIDA works today, just for those that don't know, if you start a conversation, with me, then you have to pay my rate, but I can respond to you for free. So I'm not paying, to respond to a conversation that you started with me, right?
Yeah.
Some people have asked for the ability to, toggle the direction of the payments so that if they do get, a message from someone that, I don't know, maybe they can't help them, or maybe they just, are like, maybe the conversation is going on for a long period of time and, they are feeling guilty about taking so much money or, whatever. They want the ability to sort of change directions and start sending it back, right? Mm-hmm. Which is kind of similar to what you're saying. Like, you get a message, somebody's trying to, reserve your time or whatever, and you could just send it back, no harm, no foul, like you say. So I think that's a good idea. We're experimenting with a lot of things, and we're going to keep experimenting with a lot of things, and we're going to stick some stuff out there, and whatever sticks, we're going to invest more in, because that's the stage that we're in terms of the product. It's by no means, perfect or all encompassing, but, we're whittling away at it, every day. The number of users on the network grows every day. The number of people recording, live podcasts, grows every day. And, we're just going to try to keep providing value to people and tweak as we can to improve that value.
How do you, I take it, that kind of experimental approach, but how do you parse between all the potential, features and stuff like that and actually determine what you're going to devote your limited resources to?
It's a classic, extremely difficult startup problem.
Yeah.
The only way to really do it is to just, be willing to, to cut your losses, with a feature, as quickly as you identify that, that it's not working. So we, in a way, we are trying to provide a suite of monetization tools, because we think the basic building blocks of our tools, paid calls, paid messages, paid streams, those are applicable in lots of ways that we can't predict. So those will always sort of be the standard. But, there is a whole lot of stuff that we could build that, just doesn't find product market fit with our user base, and we just need to scrap it and go a different direction.
Yeah.
I guess to answer your question, it's, you want to sort of get to that point, as quickly as possible. And the only way to do that, though, is to put new features in front of users and see how they respond to them as quickly as possible. If you spend 6 months, developing a particular thing, and you put it out there and then it doesn't work, well, you just wasted, 6 months. So we're trying to sort of keep the pace of, we release new things basically every week. We, try to stay up to date on like how those things are getting used. Do we need to tweak? Do we need to scrap? Do we need to, enhance? And, we just try to stay on top of it. But the most important thing is trying to move fast. If you get into a slow pace with a startup, you're going to lose.
Yeah. What kind of license is this all being done under?
You mean like, what kind of license? Like this broadcast or what, or the code?
No, I mean like, yeah. Like, is this, you guys open source? Can anyone contribute?
Not yet. However, Brandon and I are working on sort of an open source VIDA node that you can deploy so that all of your communications get routed through it, potentially even your streams. So I would ask you, as a podcast host, as a producer, if you could sort of click a button, let's say, and have your own VIDA node deployed somewhere, maybe it's on some hosting provider, or maybe it's somewhere else, and all of your streams would sort of, originate from that node and be broadcast from that node. If somebody landed on your VIDA page and started watching it, it would originally sort of be sourced from that node. Is that something you would, use? I guess to pause for a second before you respond, I've asked quite a few people this, and it seems to be, most people, like, they're afraid of like being deplatformed, but that fear is not enough to get them to, sort of go through the extra time, effort, pain for like managing, their own like streaming infrastructure and things like that. And, not having their, their feeds on YouTube, so I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Well, I guess it all comes down to two things, or at least initially, performance and, how hard that management is, right? So I mean, if I'm hearing you right, would a potential future option be like VIDA on your Start9 embassy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually that's what we're planning to do, is to sort of target that first.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that if, again, it was the performance was acceptable, and presumably you could still take the content and upload it to all those permission platforms afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And even even the live stream can be repeated. So like if somebody lands on your VIDA page, for example, we would be aware that the source of that stream is actually coming from your node, and through the protocol, we would be able to know how to pull that stream off your node and rebroadcast it. So you'd still get sort of the benefits of having other nodes be able to rebroadcast it, but you're sort of still sitting at the at the source.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much at the beginning of my sovereign computing journey, with my Embassy OS, and I mean, even with running your own Bitcoin node, I think that was the beginning for a lot of people, and that that's being your own bank, being your own server in a sense. And I think it's probably going to grow out from there as people, one, realize the benefits of doing that, and two, realize the drawbacks of having to ask for permission and the way you express yourself or the way you monetize yourself or any of that kind of stuff. And presumably over time, it will continue to get worse on the centralized platforms, to the point where, maybe you said something relatively innocuous and you've been demonetized or deplatformed. So yeah, I mean, I just think that's naturally, things are going to trend toward the options that provide people the most freedom. And so in that context, I would very much be interested in that option.
Cool. Yeah, cool. Well, that's definitely, something we want to do. We've also been brainstorming, like, how can we provide infrastructure to the Nostra network? I don't even know if I'm saying that like everyone else. Nostra. But there are inherent, limitations to pure P2P, communication and streaming, and even Nostr has, sort of repeater nodes, right? You will need the same thing for, for communications and streams. And, we want to provide, we want to help in that regard. We want to provide infrastructure because, again, we're trying to provide effectively a marketplace. We're trying to create a marketplace for access to human time. And if we facilitate a connection to your time because, somebody came through our marketplace, then, we want to take a fee, right? Because we facilitated. If we didn't, then, if we didn't provide value or help facilitate that connection, then we don't deserve a fee, and we don't presume to get one. So, we have a big vision and a lot of stuff we want to do. We're still only, 3 guys, and right now we're we're trying to bootstrap a new market, for time and attention. But we're definitely getting there. I hope our sort of our proof of work so far, being that you can use our network completely non-custodially, provide some evidence that we're serious about that. But we're gonna keep pushing code and releasing code, and and pushing the snowball up the hill.
All right, a couple more or 2 more, and I'll let you go. Is podcasting, podcasting 2.0 is probably one of the first popular use cases of streaming sats and that kind of stuff. Is that something you guys see in your future? Or are you focused on other things?
No, I mean, our one of our big value propositions is to provide every tool that you need as a podcast host, to record a podcast, but turn that recording into a live experience. So I know, the podcasting 2.0 spec has the ability to like include references to video, live video feeds in it. I've been trying to figure out how to get our stuff integrated with that. So I don't know if anybody's like watching this and thinks they can like point me in the right direction there, so I can get it done sooner rather than later. I would love that. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like if we're going to let you stream this to Twitter, like we're doing right now, why shouldn't we, let you, publicly post a way to access it through podcasting 2.0 spec, so that you can receive stat streams. Every VIDA user has a Lightning address, which can receive sats non-custodially. So there's no reason why we shouldn't integrate with that. I'm just kind of behind the learning curve on how it works.
Right. Another aspect, let's say, of the value-enabled web that's emerging, and this is kind of in line with the podcast stuff, is the idea of value for value, right? The capabilities that Lightning allows for that monetization model to be a lot easier to implement with a lot less friction, and we really get to see what the kind of long tail of, or how value gets sent and transferred and ascribed to things when there are basically no limitations on it. So when there's no price caps, when there's no friction in the payments, when there's no extra fees in making them, like, just how do people react to something of value when they are able to determine how much they pay? And, to summarize, usually it goes something like most people pay nothing, some people pay a little bit, and a very small portion of people pay a lot. And, it's still being determined what the kind of net result of that is in terms of how successful monetization is. The model that we've just been discussing thus far with VIDA is, and this is kind of crude, so forgive me a little bit, but it's like a paywall for your attention. Even though it's a dynamic it's like a membrane between you and all the people that want your attention. And that membrane, hopefully over time, will filter out the highest signal, i.e. the highest value to you, and you'll easily be able to select them, and for all the productivity gains that we've already discussed.
Right.
How do you interpret the value for value stuff, and how does it jive with what you've been doing with VIDA?
Yeah, we've had quite a few users ask us for sort of the pay what you want option that they could enable, whether it's for watching a stream, instead of like a binary on off, payments on or off, have a pay what you want option for pretty much all the interactions on VIDA, including, messages. So, that's probably the biggest difference between, how the payments work. And I think if we sort of implemented that, at least as an option, then, we would be sort of closer in merging with the traditional value for value, ecosystem. I personally don't see any downsides, for that. So it's really just sort of a technical thing for us to get it, implemented. But, some users really want to, they want to do that. They want a pay what you want instead of, sort of this binary option. And what would be best is if, perhaps, the two, so the dynamic pricing mechanism could work with the pay what you want mechanism, so I don't know, perhaps like if you're, for example, doing an AMA and you want, you're giving people access to come actually get on the stage of a live stream, and ask you a question, perhaps it starts as pay what you want, but as more people get in the queue, then it scales into, a dynamically priced sort of, situation. So I think there's a lot of options. We're still at the beginning. Ultimately we want to provide the product that people, want to use the most. So if people are, wanting a pay what you want option, then we're going to provide it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's reasonable to me that even in the value for value model, there probably will at some point be an element of bidding or dynamic pricing, because you'll have to filter out at scale, you have to filter it out somehow. And I think there's also a distinction, because VIDA, there's a distinction between offering something that's replicable at basically zero marginal cost, like a live stream or an image or some piece of digital whatever, versus my one-to-one direct time. I mean, that's not something that most people would be comfortable doing in a value for value way, at least not exclusively. You'd want to say like this, my time is worth whatever, an hour. But for things like this, maybe you don't want to have a price cap or a paywall. You just want to say, if you want to jump in, make it easy for people to send value, but not a necessity.
Yeah. I agree. So we're gonna keep adding features and see what happens. Like I say, I mean, we're trying to add a ton of value to creators. And if you live online, like, we're trying to offer you a bit of value. If you're not a creator, our link page is still useful, you know, and it offers features that you would typically have to, you know, pay for through something like Linktree. In fact, we can import your premium Linktree into VIDA, and, you know, with the click of a button, and you don't pay anything, you know. So like, that's sort of an example of the value we're trying to offer to normal people. But, you know, we're trying to offer a lot more value to people that actually have bigger audiences and produce content, you know, and record podcasts and stuff. You know, we want to offer, you know, 85% of Riverside and 85% of StreamYard, you know, and 85% of Restream, you know, and bundle all that in so that it's just it's a no-brainer thing. You know, it's a no-brainer thing to come over here and monetize your audience with VIDA.
Yeah. Well, man, I think you're well on your way to doing that, especially with as few of a small team as you currently have. Did we not address anything today that you think is relevant either to share with people or that you wanted to get out?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. You know, ultimately, VIDA is just about, you know, people valuing other people's time, you know. And I guess, you know, sort of, if we think about it, step back and think about it, like, if I don't value my own time, then how do I value your time? How do I appropriately value other people's time? You know, mm-hmm. I hope that by offering tools like this, we can, you know, expand access to, you know, expand the possibilities of, you know, who can access who in the global, you know, interconnected economy. But at the same time, you know, we can actually reduce some of the crap that's on the internet in form of spam, and also, you know, change the power dynamics in online marketing so that, you know, when your attention is being taken, you're actually getting compensated for that. So I don't know, that's really the big picture mission, you know, with VIDA. So if that resonates with you, you know, come make a VIDA profile, set a price for your time, and, you know, help us grow.
Awesome. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time, speaking of time, today with me to help get this set up and to have this conversation. Look forward to seeing how things develop, and, you know, perhaps we'll do it again in 6 to 12 months when there's a lot more to talk about.
Cool. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right, brother. Take care.
Later.